April 16th, 1959. Live from Television City in Hollywood.
These defendants are the embodiment of what passed for justice in the Third Reich.
Just 2 months after the premiere of Anne Frank, it was television that offered a harsher look at the Holocaust. Judgment at Nuremberg, a teleplay by Mann, was based on the real-life trial of German judges at the 1947 Nuremberg trials.
Why did we sit silent? Why did we participate? Because we loved our country.
The antagonist of this thing is patriotism. Patriotism, and how, in the name of patriotism, we can allow terrible things to happen. Here were these judges who were supposed to protect the society, who could have stopped it, but didn't. How could they go along with this?
I'm ashamed that such things could have taken place in my country.
What was it about?
It is inexcusable.
It was the guilt. Who's guilty?
If he is to be found guilty...
Are all Germans guilty? Are some Germans guilty? Are there shades of guilty? Is everyone guilty?
Who must also be found guilty. What about the rest of the world, Your Honor? Did it not know the intentions of the Third Reich?
But the show's message was ultimately compromised by last-minute network tampering.
Did it not read his intentions in Mein Kampf, published in every corner of the world?
About the dress rehearsal time, the network vice presidents and one of the sponsors came to them.
This stunning Magic Chef gas range.
The sponsor was the American Gas Company, and they said, you've got to cut the word gas out of the show.
See why today more people than ever are cooking with gas.
So instead of the gas chambers, they said we took them to the bleep chambers.
But how in the name of God can you ask me to understand the extermination of millions of men, women, and innocent children for the sake of a political expediency?
Now, our alert media took that as a message of the film. Forget the two-thirds of Jews in Europe. Forget everything else. My God, they pumped out the words gas.
2 years later, Judgment at Nuremberg was remade as a feature film. The film accentuated the role of the American judge, now played by Spencer Tracy.
We are the heroes of that story, too. The Americans came in, they and the Russians liberated the concentration camps, and then we took it upon ourselves to impose judgment on the murderers. And it does have a very glorifying, heroic image of Americans who were sent there to do justice.
The place from which you remember an event shapes the nature of what you remember. In Poland, you tell the story of the Holocaust one way. In Berlin, you tell it another way. In America, the story of the Holocaust does not teach the differences between people, but the notion that society must be broad enough and bold enough and wide enough to encompass all.
This is what we stand for. Justice, truth, and the value of a single human being.
The feature film version of Judgment at Nuremberg, directed by Stanley Kramer, boasted an all-star cast.
Were you present when the films we are about to see were taken?
Yes, I was.
But the real star was the film within the film. Atrocity newsreel footage from the liberated camps that had been presented in the courtroom during the actual trial, and now to a new generation of moviegoers.
Okay.
Inmates were made to leave their clothing on a rack. They were told they were going to take baths. Then the doors were locked. Tins of Cyclone B were released through the specially constructed.
The significance of that scene is that it shows what we're talking about. And I think until that scene, there's a kind of abstraction to the evil.
3 minutes.
There's something about turning out the lights and turning on a projector and illuminating images onto a screen and then immediately have a kind of sense of recognition that now we see what you're talking about. Now we recognize the crime. You get a sense of the ultimate Exhibit A.
which also specialized in baking ovens.